So, brother, how you doing?
Appreciate it. Thank you very, very much.
got
I
your
got this one, yeah. All right. Good morning, Omaha. How you guys doing? Good. I literally have 3 microphones on, so we're like in that weird zone. Give me 1 second. And so I'm super hyped to be here. My normal intro is just the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air theme song rewritten to my life, and so sorry you didn't get that one. But this whole theme of genius, I was super hyped that I got the opportunity to be able to speak with you guys and come down and talk this morning. The theme of this talk, when I think of genius, the theme of this talk, I'm gonna call it Find Your Grind. And when you think of genius, we all think of the brilliant people. We think of the people who have achieved amazing things, solved huge problems, caused a massive disruption in some industry. We think of people who've done incredible stuff. And when I think of genius, I think of people who have spent an insane amount of time dedicated towards their craft. We're not talking they put in their 40 hours a week. We're talking they never shut it off, all right? Their relationships suffered, their life suffered. They literally were obsessed with solving this one problem. And that's what I think of when I think of genius. I think of time. Now, the question I asked you on your name tag, that whole what do I want to be when I grow up, did anybody have a good time answering that question about what you want to be when you grow up? Absolutely. Did anybody hate that question when they were a kid? Did you hate it? I hated it. I absolutely hated it. And the reason I hated being asked what I wanted to be when I grew up was I had no idea. I had no clue what I wanted to do, and nothing in my small little farm town in Nebraska I felt connected or related to who I was. Does anybody hate that question, what do I want to be when I grow up today, because you still have no idea what you're trying to be when you grow up? Yeah, absolutely. That's half the room. That's half the reason some of you guys are here. And so when I think of this whole find your grind, what do I want to be when I grow up thing, there's this issue that equals, in my mind, when it comes to finding genius, is time. Now, here's the thing about time. We've all read this Malcolm Gladwell book about 10,000 hours. I'm sure a lot of you guys are familiar with it. But the idea is if you spend 10,000 hours dedicated to your craft, towards your thing, towards your genius, you can become an expert at it. But I want to show you something. And my favorite thing that people always tell me is Mike, I want to do all these big things, but I don't have enough time. I want to explain something about time. The average amount of time that this group right here, and I'm going to be generous, I'm going to be nice, the average amount of time that you guys in this room spend on your phone with your face absorbing someone else's time is over 5 hours a day. Over 5 hours, I'm talking that's 5 hours a day on someone else's Pinterest account, someone else's Snapchat, someone else's Instagram. Some of you guys have consumed 5 hours a day of somebody else's time. And so what happens is, if we just do the math, from the time you start high school until a couple years when you get out of college, that's over 20,000 hours you guys have invested in consuming instead of creating. And so a lot of you guys are oh no, that's not me. Get your phones out. Everybody bust out your phone and go look at your settings, click on battery, and everybody do it. I don't care. And if you're a Samsung user, I can't help you. I don't even know if that's a thing. But if you have an iPhone, because this isn't, lying to me doesn't do any good here. Look at your battery usage, look at your time. How many of you guys have spent hours on Candy Crush? How many of you guys are dropping words with friends? How many of you guys have spent a ton of time YouTube? So go pay attention to your time. Anybody embarrassed? Yeah, all right. Yep. Some of the singles in the room are yo, I've been on Tinder for 30 hours. That's where I've been. And so, yeah. And so, here's what I want to explain. There's this idea in education. I get the privilege and the honor, and sometimes it's a surprise, but I get asked to speak to thousands of schools, millions of kids every single year. And the more that I talk to students, the more that I walk in and out of high schools, the more that I realize the system, I think the system is broken. Because here's what happened to you guys. This is what happened to all of us. I call it the triangle. There's this triangle that exists. When you're a kid, you're 16 years old, the world starts to ask you that question, the same one I asked on your name tag. What do you want to be when you grow up? And because you've been driving for a whole 365 days, you're now qualified to decide what job you're going to pick that's going to define the rest of your life. And so as a kid, we say, pick a job. So they pick this job, that's at the top of the triangle. And then you're going to go spend a ton of money and a ton of time in college trying to get the strengths that are going to help you get better at that job. And then once you've done that, you've qualified and you go out and you get this job, you hope you enjoy your lifestyle. You hope you enjoy all the things that this job has to offer. But the truth is, the reason most people quit, the reason most people give up, the reason most people get bitter, the reason most people stop trying is because they don't enjoy their lifestyle. And they've spent all this time invested in a job they didn't want, building strengths they didn't need, and they end up with a lifestyle that they don't enjoy. And that's honestly the reason that so many people are unhappy and aren't finding their grind. That's the reason that some of you guys take an extended workout, like lunch break, to go apply for another job. That's why everybody's hitting refresh on the Secret Penguin job board, looking to see if Dave's hiring. That's why so many people are spending so much time trying to get out of their current job and into something else that makes them happy. And so what I'm doing, and this is my new quest, this is my new mission. I'm traveling across the world for the next couple years, and I'm taking that triangle that high school kids, I truly believe they've been lied to, and I'm flipping it upside down. And I'm gonna start asking kids the question of, what lifestyle do you want? Like, what brings you happiness? What makes you excited? What's that lifestyle you want? And then we've gotta ask people, what am I good at? Like, not what do I wish I was good at? What's that person I follow on Instagram who looks awesome? They're really good at it, so I want to go pretend to be good at it too. You got to ask yourself that honest question about, what's my actual strength? Like, what's my actual giftedness? You got to identify that. And then at the very end, after you've asked the lifestyle you want, the strength that you have, then you pick a job that fits after you've checked those two boxes. And that's how we end up finding our genius. That's how we end up finding our passion. That's how we end up finding our grind. And so I'm gonna share with you guys where my 20,000 hours have gone and how I've been able to find my grind and do the things that I've been passionate about. 8 years ago, I was 26 years old, 8 years ago, I was a social worker. I was the director of homeless outreach at a nonprofit in Lincoln, Nebraska. I was working with homeless and runaway teenagers. My job was to try to identify these at-risk kids, get them off the streets, get them back into school, hopefully help them get a stable life. That was my job, and I was excited about it, and I loved it. But there was this thing I wanted to create. I've never worked at a place longer than 2 years because I always tried to, challenge who was in charge, create new things, do things differently. My 2 years was up, and I came up with this brilliant idea that this nonprofit that I was working at needed a building and a facility and a place to connect with these at-risk youth better. And so I sat down one night and I wrote out a business plan. I wrote out this proposal for this warehouse, this like drop-in center, this place where kids could go, and I wrote out my letter of resignation. And I basically got a meeting called with my executive directors, got a meeting called with my bosses. I walked into that meeting and I had both of those sheets of paper. I had a business plan and I had basically a sheet of paper saying that I was gonna quit. And I knew no matter what happened after that meeting, I was gonna walk out holding on to one of those 2 sheets of paper, meaning I was gonna give him my letter of resignation and walk out with this plan, or I was gonna give him that plan and we were gonna move forward creating this. The meeting was supposed to be an hour. 25 minutes in, I basically had it explained to me that my idea wasn't going to happen there, so I politely gave them my letter of resignation and I walked out with my plan. I got home that night and I had that moment. I sat down and I did the I should probably just call that guy and be like, I'm just kidding, it was a bad day, I was a little hangry, my bad, we're gonna start over. And so, but what I did is, I did what I believed was my thing, I believed was my calling. So I sat down and I did what anybody my age would have done, and I straight up Googled how to start a nonprofit. I printed off the checklist, I did everything that this little checklist told me to do, and I wanted to create this indoor skate park. I wanted to create this space where kids could go to do the thing that they loved. And I had no idea how to do it, and I didn't have any money, and I didn't have hardly any resources. So instead of not letting money be the excuse, me and my friend just got creative. We ended up tearing down a couple barns using some recycled barn wood. We built an indoor skate park. I put it in a mall. I couldn't even afford the $300 it takes to open up a business checking account, so I had to borrow $300 from a friend of mine, and I have never paid him back because that is hilarious. And we had this real moment. We were a week from opening, and when you're in the mall, there's all these rules and regulations you got to follow. I didn't have any idea what I was signing up for. But when we went to open, I realized the mall was you have to paint the walls. We tore everything off the wall. It was bare concrete, and they were you have to cover this thing in paint, it's part of the rules that you signed. There was 6,000 square feet of paint, and I didn't have any money, and I certainly didn't have that much paint sitting in my garage. And so what I had was a list of every kid in Lincoln who had gotten in trouble and had community service hours for tagging some property. And so I called every one of those kids and I was like, how many cans of paint and community service hours do you have left? And they were like, we got a lot of both of those things. And I was like, all right, tight, we're gonna do this. And so I put all these kids in the mall from 9 p.m. till 9 a.m. These kids went nuts and we tagged every inch of this place. And I opened the doors to the world's first ever and probably last nonprofit indoor skate park that someone was crazy enough to put inside of a mall. And when we opened our doors, at first, the community was a little divided. And I think this is true of most misfits. I think this is true of a lot of creative people. A lot of people got it and a lot of people didn't. I had people who were rooting for me to fail. I had people who believed in me 100%. I had people in the middle in the skate industry who this was so different from what they had known that they didn't trust my intentions or they didn't believe that this was going to last. I had all different responses from people, some good, some bad, but we just chipped away at it. And when you run a nonprofit, some of the things that you have to do is you got to do fundraisers. And I knew we weren't going to be the like gala spaghetti dinner fundraiser group. And so the first fundraiser that I did, I chose to live homeless under a bridge until I raised $10,000 that I could afford to pay for all these kids who wanted to skate. And when you make a decision like that in Nebraska, it's like 60 degrees, like late February. The next day, a blizzard hit, and I slept under a bridge that first night in a negative 17-degree blizzard. And I ended up sleeping under that bridge. I thought, like, I got a lot of friends. Like, I got like 1,500 people on Facebook. Like, if they all give me $10, it's only gonna take like a week. I ended up living under that bridge for 30 days. It was literally just under a month I spent sleeping under this bridge homeless to raise money for the Bay, which is what this place is called. A couple months after that, we were out of money and I had to do it again. And so instead of sleeping under a bridge, I was like, I got to come up with a new idea. And so this was like 2 weeks before I got married, maybe 3. I picked my wife up from work. I looked at her and I said, hey, baby, don't cry. I was like, but I got an idea. I was like, me and some of the guys, we're going to grab our skateboards. We're going to drive all the way out to just past Scotts Bluff at the Nebraska border, and I'm going to skate from Wyoming all the way across the state of Nebraska back to Lincoln. We're going to call it Skate the State, and we're going to raise a ton of money. I was like, I'll be back like 10 days before we get married. Like, everything's going to be tight. Like, don't even stress. Like, it's cool. And her response to me was, she looked at me crying, and she was just like, why can't you be normal? And I was like, this is the normal. Like, this is the thing. And so me and my friends did. We grabbed our skateboards, we drove out west, and we skated 400 plus miles across the state of Nebraska to raise money for this place that means everything to me and my friends. And it kind of worked, and we just chipped away at it, and we chipped away at it. But there was a really key moment. There was a really key moment for me and all the crew down at the Bay. And I've seen a couple Skate for Change shirts. I don't know where my dude with the Skate for Change, this guy right here with the Skate for Change shirt on. And so there was a key moment that happened for us. I was asking the community to believe in our kids. Like, I was trying to say, like, you got to see these kids. They're amazing. Like, check out what they do. Look how creative and passionate they are. And there was a key moment where I turned it over and I let my kids start giving back to the community. And that's when things changed for us. I started skating around, giving out socks and bottles of water. I was an outreach worker. It was quicker to skate and it was easy to do. I opened it up for these little guys to show up. And 2 kids turned to 4, 4 turned to 8, 8 turned to 10, and then one day I show up to go do Skate for Change, and we've got 40 high school and middle school skateboarders on a street corner with backpacks full of their own stuff. And I looked at those 40 kids, and I just started cracking up, because there is no teacher, coach, cop, adult, administrator, or business professional who walks past 40 middle school and high school skateboarders with backpacks on and thinks, well, look at these good kids about to do good things right now. Like, go get them, boys. Like, nobody's thinking that. I'm looking at these kids like somebody already called the cops. Like, we have to go right now. Like, that helicopter, that's for us. Like, we're gone. Let's do this. And we would just skate, and I would see the most incredible thing happen. You guys can't understand how beautiful this is. You're skating with an army of kids, downtown Lincoln, downtown Omaha. They see a homeless person, everybody stops, kids sit down, one of these guys will unzip their backpack, and these kids are giving out their food, their socks, their water, their stuff, and they're not doing it for the resume. They're not doing it for a college application. They're doing it because they love skateboarding and they want to help people, and we've combined the two. And the minute we turned it over to our kids, big things started happening. Companies like Red Bull and State Farm started paying attention. I got an opportunity to meet people in skateboarding on a whole different level. And I basically took this tiny little skate park in a mall and we moved it to a warehouse that we couldn't afford. And this warehouse today is a 33,000 square foot warehouse for kids. It's a skate park, coffee shop, concert venue, art space. I'm in the process right now, and I'm so proud to say this, that I'm taking that space and we're literally walking through the process of trying to turn this into a high school, creating a crazy, amazing creative space for kids to be educated and learn what it means to be prepared for the jobs of tomorrow. And this coffee shop that we created in here, we didn't just like bust out a couple Keurigs and burn some coffee. Like, what we did is we created the most hipster, pretentious coffee shop in Lincoln, and we did it on purpose. Like, we really did it on purpose. The reason this coffee shop exists is we're creating a job training program, and the people that we want to be our baristas are the victims of sex trafficking, the victims of domestic violence, the high school dropouts, the teen moms, the girls that are in foster care. We're creating a space where we can teach these kids real skills, give them real pride and real dignity, and give them an opportunity to go do what they love. When they're done working for us, it's gonna make Starbucks look like McDonald's, all right? Like, this is gonna be amazing for her. So, appreciate it. Thank you. And so we've spent this insane amount of time just working on this building and working on this space. And the whole reason that I'm so passionate about this is I love working with young people. It's my biggest passion. I've said I want to work with kids until I'm done. I think kids need three things. They need somewhere to go, they need something to do, and they need people who care. And I'm trying to create a space that is filled with those three things. It's an amazing place to go, filled with amazing people who care about them, and they get to do the things that they love and the things that they're passionate about, and we're helping young people find their grind, because that's what we live to do. So my challenge for you guys today is really simple. Think about your triangle. Like, think about 16-year-old you. Maybe it's 28-year-old you. Maybe it's 48-year-old you. Like, think about the job you currently have. Like, is that job giving you the lifestyle you want, using the strengths that you love? For me, when I flipped that triangle upside down in my life, it was easy. I love the creative lifestyle. I love skateboarding. I love music. I love art. I love all the stuff that offers. That's the lifestyle I wanted. My strengths were simple. I loved working with young people, and I loved social work. So I took my lifestyle, and I took my strength, and I created a job for myself. I created an opportunity for me to go do the things that I love. So in addition to traveling around the world and speaking to high school kids, I've got a curriculum that I'm dropping. I literally just basically hit save on the final edit of my first book, which comes out in a month. It's called Legacy versus Likes, and the challenge is to show people stop living for likes and start living for your legacy, and I'm super excited for that to come out. And so you guys should all buy it, by the way. That'd be cool. That would help. Yeah. But here's what I want you guys to think about as we sit here today and we're thinking about your grind and your genius. My question would be, where have your 20,000 hours gone? Like, where has your time gone? Like, has your time gone towards finding your grind or finding your genius? Or has your time gone consuming and paying attention to other people's lives or paying attention to somebody else's genius? And so that question I asked you, what do you want to be when you grow up? I think it still rings true today. I don't think we ever stop growing up. I don't think we ever stop trying to find our genius. So my hope for this group is pay attention to your time. And for some of us, maybe we need to flip that triangle upside down and we need to start asking ourselves different questions. Because I think when we start living out of our strength and living out of the lifestyle that we enjoy and the things that we love, I think that's when we find our genius. And I honestly think that's when we begin to find our grind. And that's all I got for you guys today. I appreciate your time. Thank you so much. Absolutely. Thanks. Appreciate it.